Kia ora koutou, katoa, hello and welcome to the breakdown. Last night, the All Blacks went atop the Rugby Championship after a dominant performance in Perth against the Wallabies. Plenty for us to discuss though, because once again, there was plenty of controversy. Chelsea Ellie, Sir John Kerwin and Mills Muliaina. And Mills, plenty to discuss out of this test match. Some great performances, very, very different in regards to the outcome the last time we were in Perth. But we see red once again, thankfully, just for 20 minutes. But is this about the Wallabies not being able to capitalise or just how good the All Blacks were?
I think a bit of both. Definitely a great game. I think some individuals really stood up. Doesn't Ian Foster have a luxury of selection in terms of the different sort of players he can actually pick in the type of game he's wanting to play? But the All Blacks were clinical in terms of when they had the ball, the turnovers and how effective they were in their click plays. But again, I suppose the inexperience and the rush and the frantic ways of the Wallabies let them down in so many areas. And again, thankfully enough for the All Blacks, the red card, spirited them on. Really, it didn't have any sort of effect. If anything, I think they scored a couple of tries or scored just before half time. So a great result for the All Blacks.
Chelsea, we scored 38 points against the Wallabies. We continue to build on our numbers. We were dominant the last time we played them as well. When you look at this, though, how much of today's performance was built on the back of our defence?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was commenting throughout the whole game on how good our AB's defence was. It was absolutely relentless, 1 to 15 across the park. So I think that stopped any potential Wallabies momentum, and that probably forced them to make a few of those errors where we got a few of our intercepts out of. I just think the AB's boys, for them to go over there to Perth, they're missing a lot of their leaders, like we've talked about. And also, Adi Savia looked to go off with an injury quite early on, plus a red card on top of that. What more could have gone wrong for them? And yet they played out of their skin. Some of the best rugby they've played this year, I think. Some of those tries that were scored by them were just absolutely outstanding. So kudos to the boys.
JK, far from perfect. A number of areas they'd look at. Their scrum conceded a number of penalties. Their line-out had some wobbles when they lost Cody Taylor through injury in the first half as well. But the talking point first and foremost is around Jordie Barrett and the fact he suffered a red card for what, to me, once again, an unintentional action in the game. Was it warranted? And are we once again having to look at things in this game to protect both players who are contesting for the ball?
Yeah, well, for me, protect is about intention, right? Absolutely no intention. Bad call. Absolute bad call for me. I think that actually there was probably fault on both sides. Don't you need to let the player land before you actually attack him? And, Barrett's still in the air. He's up. He's a bit off balance, leaning backwards. Your leg always kicks out. So ridiculous decision. We've spoken about how referees just need to get a feel for it. There, take a breath. Besides that, I thought the ref was pretty good, but that was a bad decision, I thought. And unfortunately, the Wallabies just could not take advantage of it. I mean, I think maybe Dave Rennie's got to have a look at him and say, look, if he's the future, maybe we need to bring him off the bench with 20 minutes to go. He misses that kick. He does some stuff that I really thought just not really handling the pressure and putting the All Blacks under pressure when they need to. But that's not taking any. I thought it was an outstanding performance. Retallick back to his best. Defence was bruising. I would say Akira Ioane has come of age today after being through a couple of years, and he's come back and he's worked hard. But I thought he worked incredibly hard. I mean, everyone saw his attack, but he worked incredibly hard defensively. But that was a really good performance. They won't be worrying too much about the wobbles in the line out, young guys coming on for first or second test match in a heated situation. The team's playing that well, and that's the beauty of the All Blacks. You can get away with that sort of stuff, but they were outstanding, I thought. Really, really left off from what they started at Eden Park.
Mills, let's be honest though, the Wallabies aren't the standard now, are they? And they haven't been for a while. The All Blacks will know they'll have to get better when they come up against, I think, both Argentina and South Africa. I think Dave Rennie's got some real issues on his hands right now. Surely after back-to-back performances against the All Blacks, which have been substandard.
Yeah, and really they needed to start well. And I think, obviously, Little Seal missing, they almost had an awesome start, albeit come back for a penalty. But there's obviously the mistakes they're actually making are actually costing them points. It's not so much you're making a mistake and then you're giving the ball over and then you're having to get yourself back. There's no sort of, you haven't been hurt by the mistakes. It's not those sort of mistakes. It's the mistakes they're making. They're actually 14 points now, and then the gap just widens and widens. And for a team like that that's so inexperienced, it's really difficult for them to come back, and they've sort of almost lost that sort of the mental game as well. So for Dave Rennie, this is probably a huge step backwards. Lots of talk about the physicality and how that was going to sort of play out. The All Blacks definitely won that, and they won it without the ball in hand. And I just wonder, Akira, player of the day, no doubt, streaks ahead and what he done. But I also feel, the selections that Ian Foster has in terms of, Barrett being in the locking department, does that free up someone like an Akira to be able to play the wider game, that he's not so much having to concentrate on that sort of that physical stuff. And don't get me wrong, Sam Whitelock does that, but they've got Barrett there and also Retallick, who are just going all guns blazing in terms of that physical battle. Now it frees up someone like Akira Ioane to really play his game. So I think in terms of where the All Blacks are at, I think Ian Foster will be licking his lips. The midfield combination is coming together, really nicely. And then he's also now, I know we spoke about, Beauden Barrett and TJ Perenara. They've been introduced back into this All Black environment now. And so lots of selection headaches. But I think for the Wallabies, there'll be some soul searching because their captain was under the pump. He had some injury worries there in terms of this cut. Where do they go to now? They lack a lot of leadership at the moment. So it's a massive ask now for Dave Rennie to be able to get his side back to that sort of pre-Bledisloe sort of campaign.
Chelsea, Mills mentioned the midfield. Are you starting to like the way that combination is starting to develop, and particularly defensively today? They seemed as though they were able to work nicely off each other, that David Havili and Anton Leonard-Brown pairing. Is it still a work in progress, or is it continuing to build nicely?
I think the latter, continuing to build nicely. Really impressed again with David Havili tonight. I think his decision-making is really good. And you can see that he's obviously getting more and more comfortable in his role as an All Black 12. And I think having Anton Leonard-Brown outside him at centre has got to help as well, because he brings such a calmness to the back line. He's a leader on defence as well. So having him there to be in his ear all game will help. And I actually think he played well outside Bodie. And yeah, I think Fozzie's done a good job with just backing a few of the boys and keeping them in at some positions where he could have made changes. And I think that's really starting to show in the likes of Havili and a few others as well.
JK, I do have a concern. We got penetrated through the middle a lot last night in Perth. It seems as though, once again, those running halfbacks that are really giving us a challenge. We know South Africa are going to bring that. The robustness of the Argentinian halfbacks as well. Is that an area, you'd look at it and go, you know what, that's the one place you don't want to get penetrated from?
Yeah, well, the All Blacks are going to go away and look at those little things. I think the biggest concern with the running, with the running sort of halfback, especially when you've got your guard dogs, is I think we need to come up with a defensive system where someone slots in. So, maybe the guy comes around from the blind side, or maybe the halfback slots in there as much as he can. I saw that late with Perenara, got beaten a couple of times. The hard thing in that situation is, you got the big fellas, and do they want to accelerate against a little sniveler with good feet? So it's just something that I think particularly the Australians have been very good at, and we'll have to have a look at the guard dogs and maybe having a look at trying something different defensively.
So, JK, at the end of the game, and I want everyone to comment on this, is the fact you look at that 80 minutes, was that a step forward from the last time these two teams played a couple of weeks ago, or have we just held our own?
All Blacks 3 steps forward, Australia 3 steps back. If you're Dave Rennie, you've got some serious problems. They never give up. They show incredible courage, but they were never in that game, I didn't think. I was sitting there and I was never really worried that it was close. I think he's got some serious problems at his decision-making at 10. I don't think that the young fellas ready to take control of the football team. I think when you listen to Dave Rennie talk, is he trying to be too much like a New Zealand side? You talk about physicality. I'd never talk about physicality if I was playing the All Blacks, ever. I would keep that quiet. Maybe he needs to look at their style of rugby and come up with a different game plan, because currently this game plan is not working. They've been beaten pretty well in 3 test matches, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree with JK. I think the ABs have definitely taken a step forward, just because of what I mentioned earlier as well, about having some of their top leaders still at home, and all those other things, the red card and stuff happening in a game. For them to still pull off a performance like that and beat the Aussies pretty comfortably, in my eyes. I think we left 10 points out there as well on the boot, which for me, that's massive and probably not good enough at test level rugby to miss some of those kicks that we did miss. So something needs to be done there, and I'm sure either Bodie's going to go away and practice his goal kicking hard out, or probably hand the reins over to someone else who's capable as well. So if we got those 10 points, we would have been close to 50. So awesome work by the boys. And yeah, agree with JK again with the Wallabies. They've got some serious soul searching to do. I think, like you said as well, Noah Lolosea is just not quite ready to be a starting 10 to control a game against a team like the All Blacks. So probably need to look at what they can do there. And if I was Australia, if I was Dave Rennie, I would bring a much more experienced 10 in that had a bit more of a cool, calm, collected head, just to get the momentum going in Australia's way at some point in the game.
You're not thinking Quade Cooper, are you?
Well, he's from Tokoroa too, so he's a good boy.
Mills, for you?
Look, this is a very inexperienced Wallaby side, very inexperienced, but you've got to look at some of the positives. Take McDermott, he's playing some good rugby. Obviously, Little Seal, he's had a really good shot at it, but he is the future, and everything that he's sort of done in the game plan that Dave Rennie's trying to implement, I think they can play that sort of style. I think they can play that, but they can't play that 3 times in a row against the All Blacks. They've got to go away now and start thinking about, okay, do we need to play them differently? I think tonight they try to win that physical battle. They tried out their upbeat sort of tempo play, but they're just too lateral. So do they need to now go away and say, well, we've got to bring something different to our game? Is it just kicking down there and get our style like you're talking about, JK, a style that suffocates the All Blacks into sort of, making the mistakes. But then you've got to have a defensive sort of system that everyone buys into. And I think at the moment, what the Wallabies are doing at the moment, they're a little bit unsure. As soon as they get the ball, there's a bit of space there. That it just seems a little bit frantic and panic. They throw those long passes where they think, there's an opportunity there. We can score from here when it's perhaps not on. That's experience. That's an experience. And so I think you'd want to give someone a go in at 10 now. Little Seal's the future. He's had a shot. But try and ease him back into that. Ease him back into the reins until he gets a little bit of confidence. And I think when they start playing, the Springboks, then the Argentinians, that's perhaps a way for Dave Rennie to think about the big picture. The results, not ideal. They won't be liking that at all. But they're starting to change things, and now you're seeing the reason why they've changed that ghetto law, to be able to strengthen this Wallaby side up. But it's going to take some time, and they've got to be patient with it. Yes, they've taken 3 steps back, but this is still a quality Wallabies team, and if they can stick at it and win the next couple of games, then that will just do them some wonders. But they've got to change their game plan when they come to the All Blacks. They can't play that same game plan three test matches in a row, because the All Blacks are too smart for that.
I disagree with this being a quality Wallaby outfit. I've played against quality Wallaby teams in the past. We all have, and this isn't one. And they've got a long way to go before I think they can compete with the top sides in the world, and they've got to make some change, and they've got to find a way to get better. You talk about inexperience. We've still got the likes of George Bauer, Samasoni Tokiaho, who haven't played a lot of test matches. Dalton Papali'i hasn't played a lot of test matches. Even Akira Ioane, one of the standouts tonight. Ethan Blackadder comes off the bench. I mean, I think you've got to be realistic about what it was that we actually went out there. We lost leadership during the game, and we were still down to 14 men for 20 minutes, able to put 38 points on them. It's all good and well them, I think, believing in themselves, But in the end, they've got to go out and they've got to start performing because it hasn't been good enough so far for me in 2021. Well, we've had our say on the breakdown, but let's hear from inside the All Black camp. And yesterday, obviously, a difficult and challenging test match as always. Afternoon rugby. Brad Weber joins us on the show. Brad, I want to ask you first and foremost, afternoon rugby in Perth, it looked hot. Did it take its toll?
Yeah, it was hot. It actually hasn't been really hot through the week, so we actually hadn't had really a chance to get used to the heat. So even standing there while the anthems were going, black jerseys, geez, they were wearing a puffer vest. So yeah, she was pretty warm. The sweat was flying, but to be honest, I'm sweet. I love afternoon footy, and I reckon it should stay if it was up to me. Like running rugby and all that stuff is probably the big boys that would have struggled a bit more than me.
Did you notice the change in the nature of the contest given the conditions?
Yeah, definitely. I think you could see both teams were pretty keen to throw it around when we could. Even when Geordie got red carded, there was that sort of 5 or 10 minute bit after that, and we were throwing it around from our own 22. We were pretty keen to make the use of the afternoon sun. So yeah, definitely changed.
Any point where you're thinking, hey, maybe boys, just to get it into the stand to give us a breather? Because it looked like from time to time, this are long periods of play. You're talking about doing it as a halfback with some of the tidies. That was some sort of contest.
Yeah, I was thinking about a couple of times about slowing it down and maybe putting a kick up or something, but I just listened to the guys around me, and they all seemed, with the way that they were talking in their voice, they were pretty confident to keep throwing it around. So, I just feed the speed and just try and back up where I can. But yeah, there's even a bit of a passage of play. I think it went to Nepo, and then he did an outrageous offload to George, and shows how the mindset that some of the lads have, even the two props combining in the middle of the field, 80 metres out from our own goal line, keen to have a crack.
Look, it was a great game to watch, to enjoy, but for you guys, that wrapped up a Bledisloe Cup, second game in the Rugby Championship, 3-0 against the Wallabies. I know you've got 4 big weeks in front of you. How did you guys wrap it up last night in terms of, was there a small celebration of the fact that a job well done? Yeah,
we had a good celebration at the ground, and then back at the hotel afterwards. We had you got to celebrate wins like that, and especially like a clean sweep against the Aussies. It doesn't happen every year, so we're pretty keen to celebrate that and make sure we decompress as much as we can, and then get our mind on the job for from today onwards. So that was the way it was, and yeah, pretty happy about that. I enjoyed celebrating a good win, so the boys took it.
You do it well. I imagine you're a really good tourist. Let's talk about today, though. Review done, and was there some honest truths, as always, in the All Blacks about what needs to be worked on coming into this weekend?
I've got to be honest with you, Goldie, we haven't had the review yet. So,
oh, really?
That's coming up. But there will, no doubt, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. There's still going to be some hard truths pointed at you, and no doubt I'll be in the firing line with a couple of things. But so I look forward to that. But yeah, I think that might be happening tonight or tomorrow morning. So I'll get my medal, get my shield and sword, and come fighting.
Let's lastly look at what's coming up this weekend, though, because we know that the Pumas Argentina sneaked up on the All Blacks last year and put on an outstanding performance. They've had a couple of games against South Africa. You guys found motivation for this game against the Wallabies. You won't be short of motivation coming up this weekend about what you're going to need to do. How important is the next 7 days? A few of those still in Perth, and preparing what's going to be a different challenge.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, yeah, we got taught a pretty decent lesson last year about the quality of the Argentinians, and we haven't got to play them this year. Even obviously with the way Super Rugby was, we don't get to play the Hawatis anymore. So it'll be a little bit of something new for a lot of us this year. But we're really keen to win the Rugby Championship, so that's motivation enough as much as it is playing the Argentinians the first time. So this week's going to be crucial in putting us in good stead to win that.
On another point, I'm just seeing a lot of social media. You're doing some mixing and during the week at days off. Are we expecting to see a mixtape of some sort come out?
I knew this was coming. Yeah, we've been getting them out and making the boys enjoy themselves while we're in quarantine, and had a few raves in my room, and I think we might go down to, it's a sunny day today, so I might get them out down by the pool and have a little bit of a bit of fun down by the pool with them. And maybe it might be something on the road, along the road. I've got one mix on SoundCloud, so if you search me up, I'm on there, but it's pretty basic. So get into it. If you like your D&B, it's there.
All right, mate. We'll make sure everyone gets a chance to check it out. Hey, look, enjoy the week. We know, as always, you have to recover from a test match, but doesn't get any easier. Well done yesterday. Outstanding performance. And thanks for joining us on the breakdown tonight. Cheers, mate.
Nice. Sweet as. Cheers, Goldie. Legend.
That's the test match wrapped up from across the Tasman. Big news today, though. The Black Ferns has been announced for the end of year tour. We're going to talk about that after the break and so much more. Don't go away.
Welcome back to Breakdown. Stop talking about that red card yet. I think the debate will rage for many a week to come. All right, let's get up to speed with some international news. And it's Bula Vinaka and G'day. Fiji Drua will be based in Australia for the 2022 Super Rugby Pacific Comp. With Fiji suffering at the hands of COVID, the new addition to the Super family will be based in Australia, and that's where they'll play their home games. The other new recruit, Moana Pacifica, will be based right here in Aotearoa. Well, COVID continues to menace with global sport. Within 60 minutes, 4 legs of the Sevens World Circuit were cancelled. First, Hamilton and Sydney announced that due to COVID restrictions, their stops would be cancelled. Then Singapore and Cape Town pulled their legs. It's a major blow to the tournament that's been hit hard by the global pandemic. Former Ireland coach and Kiwi Joe Schmidt is leaving his role at World Rugby as Director of Rugby and High Performance. Now, that's a role he took up in October 2020. Schmidt is moving home to New Zealand to spend more time with family. He finishes at the end of this year. His role was to work on player welfare, law changes, and oversee the management of match officials. Meet the 17-year-old who really is too big for his boots. He stands at 2 metres tall, or old school, 6'7", and he may have to give away rugby because of his size 16 flippers. Rugby Nat Oliver from East Yorkshire can't squeeze his feet into off-the-shelf boots, and he's not a pro to get custom boots. Heck, he's only a teenager. His mum says what started out as a bit of a joke is no laughing matter anymore. All right, to our players who'll soon be globe-trotting, the Black Ferns squad to travel to Europe for the end-of-year tour has been named. They'll play 2 tests against England and 2 against France. All right, let's take a peek at the pack. Any name with an asterisk next to it is a newbie, and we've got a whopping 12 debutants in the squad. Grace Hopapa Barrett and Georgia Ponsonby are 2 hookers who get a big opportunity thanks to great form and injury in the ranks. Auckland's 20-year-old Myrus enters the lineup as the only debutant in the locking department, but there's a familiar name in the Lucies. Bay of Plenty's Les Elder, 34 years young, returning from having a baby, she captains the side. In the backs, 2 new caps will be understudy to the incredible Kendra Coxedge at halfback. It was only a matter of time before Auckland teenager Patricia Malipo earned the black jersey, the dynamic first 5 with a bright future. Our own Chelsea Alley stars in the midfield. No new names in the outside backs. Plenty of depth for the coaching staff to pluck from, I'd suspect. Well, selection wasn't an easy task for coach Glenn Moore, especially with the limited competition thanks to COVID.
Yeah, look, it has been tough, and there was some really hard conversations just over the last day where we've had to talk to some people about not being included, and really some of that has been affected also by not being able to see enough of them in that FPC, and it probably couldn't have hit us at a worse time, really. We're in that that window of 2 to 3 weeks to make final selections, and then obviously COVID's hit us, and we've had to make a lot of those decisions without seeing the end of that.
Moore says he will be relying on his 7 stars not only for their skill set, but their experience in coping and dealing with the tricky situation of COVID with the restrictions and the limitations. But Moore is also very mindful that it's a massive 12 months ahead, and he'll be turning to the wider group of players, up to 50, for options moving forward.
And look, there's some really talented players that have missed out of the selection, like really talented, and I'm sure when they get their opportunity, they'll stake a good claim as well. So, as we look towards next year, we're still planning on being able to play a Laurie O'Reilly prior to the World Cup, and also the Pac 4, which is us, US and Canada, which at this stage has been looked at to be played in New Zealand. So, and then we've got the elite competition being the super concept starting at the beginning of the year as well. So there's going to be a lot of rugby and a lot of opportunity for people to put their hand up.
So the Breakdown's loss will be the Black Ferns game. Even her coach giving her tally talk the thumbs up.
Yeah, she's doing a great job on there, isn't she?
She sure is, Glenn. We're keeping her. So a challenging calendar for the women in 2022. Let's have a look. All the hard work is tested with the inaugural Super Rugby comp kicking off, we hope, in March. The medal hunt is on in July with the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. While the Sevens circuit has been hit this year, next year South Africa is hosting the Sevens World Cup in September. The following month, it's the Women's 15s World Cup played right here in our own backyard. It's a huge calendar, Chelsea, a massive but exciting task ahead.
Yeah, massive year for the women's game next year with a few real pinnacle events. Obviously, the World Cup was postponed this year. We would have been heading into camp to play that right now, but that's been pushed back till next year. There's the Sevens World Cup as well. Oh no, sorry, Com Games. So I think the challenge there is going to be the balancing of players, because obviously we've got quite a few girls who play both 7s and 15s, so it's going to be a matter of them kind of picking what route they want to go down, and then coaches obviously having conversations with how they balance the girls that do both. So I'm so excited. It's been such a long time for us since we've had any international tests in the 15s game. So yeah, girls are just humming, and yeah, really looking forward to it.
Congratulations. Look, this would have been an awkward show if you hadn't made the team. But are you ready to get back on the road again? Thinking it's been a couple of years since you played in Perth against the Wallaroos.
Yeah, obviously, just got the call a few days ago that I was successful. So you guys would all know what it's like when you know the team's about to get named and you know you're getting a phone call at some point. So every time my phone kind of buzzed, I got a bit nervous, and I'd get a bit angry if it was just my brother or something texting. But yeah, when I saw the coach's name come up, I still get the same really excited feeling, even though I've been in the team for quite a long time now. But especially since we haven't had a test in 2 years, that's the first successful phone call I've had in 2 years. So yeah, pretty relieved, and yeah, really excited to head over to the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, Chelsea, congratulations, amazing. I'll never forget every time I got selected. It was amazing. In fact, the first time I had a nice big cigar. And then when I got dropped, I had a cigar as well, because I thought that was a celebration as well. But let's hope you don't have the dropped cigar for a while. But 12 out of 24 new caps, Chelsea, do you see that as fundamental with 12 months out from the World Cup, or a little bit risky? Because we don't know what this COVID world's bringing, and you might only have 2 or 3 games, or this 5-game competition or whatever it is, hopefully 5 if the Aussies turn up. So a lot of new caps. You see that as opportunity or risk?
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about that. And I think because it has been that long period between tests, 2 years is a long time to see girls at FPC level and even playing for the Super Rugby teams now. So although there's 12 new caps, some of those girls feel like they've been around for ages. And I think if there had have been tests in the last few years, they would have been capped a lot earlier. We still had that Barbarians game last year as well, where a lot of those 12 new caps actually played, but because it wasn't included as a test, they didn't actually get their caps. So it sounds like a lot, but I think the coaches have done a good job in selecting girls who are definitely ready, and those girls that did really put their hand up when they had the opportunity in the Barbarians game. So yeah, there's a pretty good mix of youth experience. Some of the Sevens girls obviously coming back helps us as well, because they live and breathe a professional environment, so they'll help us out in that sense as well. So yeah, I mean, when I got my call, I always think about the girls that are getting it for the first time. So for those 12 girls, just massive congratulations, and so excited to see them get their first ever test jersey as well.
Mills, in regards to Glenn Moore's job, actually, Mills, I just want to ask you this, is that for Glenn Moore next year, you think about the balancing act that Chelsea's talked about, and how does he assess form going through the course of the season when he's going to have players playing in different environments in different games?
Yeah, I mean, a tough one. Congratulations, Chelsea. Wonderfully fit. But I suppose in some ways he's probably had a less of a headache in terms of the Sevens girls. I just had the Olympics, so, having the delayed another year probably helped him in that sense. He's picked, those sort of girls. But what is coaching? I mean, this is the whole thing. They're going to go into India tour. I love the fact that they picked a big squad. Touring's a different beast. But it gives them the opportunity also to sort of try and get a gauge on where those young players, so some of the more experienced girls as well, because go over for 4 to 5 weeks, might even be longer now because of this, there's so much. It gives him an idea about where the girls are at, both I suppose from a physical point of view, but also when you're leading into the Rugby World Cup. It's exciting times ahead, I think, for these girls. But the big one for me, and Chelsea mentioned it before, what influence the Sevens girls are going to have in terms of that touring, because it's all right going overseas, to Perth for a couple of games here and a couple of games back here in New Zealand. But when you're on the road for 4 weeks, often it's more the challenging part is often who your roommate is. Some of those factors you have to sort of factor in and come away with it. And so I'm looking forward to the way how they go. Especially given the competition they're up against. The Six Nations that they have over there with the women's competition is exceptional. So they've had sort of quality sort of games over the years, both the French and also the English. But, Glenn Moore will be, quietly excited that one, obviously they're getting on the plane, but two, he now gets an opportunity to get his hands on the girls again and really build that massive team environment.
Lastly, Chelsea, just how important now as well, though, that this much talked about Super Rugby competition for your teams gets off the ground. It may only be a month long, but to kick off next year's season, would that be a real, I suppose, leg up for what's in front of you?
Yeah, definitely. Like Mills just mentioned, the girls overseas in the Northern Hemisphere have been playing those Six Nations games. They're test rugby fit, whereas for us, we're going over there with absolutely no test rugby under our belt for 2 years now. So having the next level of competition in regards to the Super Women's Rugby Comp is going to be massively important for us. The jump from FPC to Black Ferns at the moment is probably too big to get anywhere near kind of test ready. But from the game that I played in February or March, was it, when I played for Chiefs, the level of that was much closer to being a test match. So if we can get more girls around the country playing at that level, then we're going to hit the ground running when we get into our test windows.
Yeah, massive. Looking forward to the challenge. Looking forward to seeing what this team that Glenn Moore and his coaching side have put together. You'll have some challenges.
Welcome back to The Breakdown and the final instalment of the Greatest All Blacks 15, where we wrap things up with the back three of wing and fullback. The panel of myself, Ricky Swinell, Ken Laban and Phil Gifford picked Jonah Lomu on the left wing and Christian Cullen at fullback. And you supported that in huge numbers, with Cullen getting more votes than any other player in any position. But on the right wing, we were split over Jeff Wilson and Brian Williams, and you went for Doug Howlett, the All Blacks' leading try scorer. So, again, we called on Sir Graham Henry, and he sided with B.G. Williams. So, the greatest All Black back three is Jonah Lomu, Brian Williams, and Christian Cullen.
Jonah simply was the most dangerous rugby player, I think, that's played the game.
When you've got 120 kgs and you're 6'5", you're going to do some damage.
Jonah Lomu is the only global superstar we'll ever have in rugby.
Phenomenal. Such a big, powerful beast of a man who could run faster than anyone else.
And to have a guy like that alongside you, you're like, man, this is easy.
And the thing about him was he scored tries that no one else would ever score.
He could run around them, he could run over them, he could run inside them.
Lomu charging! The big man's done it again!
He played in the county sevens team, and I'd already been told about how great this kid was. And he was in number 8. And we watched him, Earl and I, and we talked about it. And then almost together we said, how would he go on the wing? As a loose forward, he wasn't going to be much bigger and certainly not tougher than a lot of the top international loose forwards. So his great ability would be nullified to an extent. But if we were good enough to develop him as a wing, then he could be something the world's never seen. Fortunately, that's the way it turned out.
Lomu, he's done it again! Lomu in space. Vintage stuff from Jonah. Here we go! Can he make it? You betcha! You betcha!
You look at guys that couldn't tackle him, and I was like, surely you must be able to, if you just get in low. And I remember the first day I played against him, I tried tackling him twice, and I got nowhere near him. And my respect for everyone that had been shunted off went up a lot, I tell you.
He was so giving, of the time, but become a success, and he shared that with everyone. And I think that was, a big part of him.
Handed away by Umaga, they're shifting it smartly. Now Lomu's in the clear. One-on-one. Regan comes across, he's got support. Latini, fantastic.
I don't think there ever will be a player like Jonah who could, you can go to America or go to Brazil and they know who Jonah Lomu is.
When you walk down Leicester Square with Jonah Lomu, buses stop, crowds start to form. Yeah, it was tough watching him go through that sometimes, and you just kind of get a gauge of, shucks, how well known is someone.
We never saw him in his peak. We never saw that. He was at 60, 70, 80% of his ability when he had his illness. If he had ever been able to go to 100%, so he didn't have that, what would we have seen?
Wilson gets in the action. Now Lomu, the big fellow. Can Terry do it again? He can. Chips him up. Lomu gets up and goes again.
We saw a colossus as he was, but I think he could have even achieved greater things than we saw. I mean, that's how good he was.
Brian Williams going backwards, looking for space, and through and getting it. Great try, Brian Williams.
Well, those guys you mentioned, I've got no show. JK and Jonah and...
1970, a young Auckland Pacific Island player and a law student who was doing his studies out of Auckland University called Brian George Williams was forced to tour South Africa along with 3 other players who was declared an honorary white. In some ways it's a disgrace, but that image of BG in South Africa, at that time it was segregated, so those honorary whites from New Zealand weren't allowed access to public transport, they weren't allowed access to health services, had anything, weren't allowed access to all of those things that come along with apartheid. And BG became a beacon of hope, a beacon for fairness, for justice and for equality.
He was a young man at that time and took so much on his shoulders in a divided country.
He was so high profile, he was so good, there was so much attention on him, unbelievable sidestep in the un-goal area to get that try out of the post in South Africa. But in terms of the impact and changing the course of the history of our game, for me, Brian Williams, the greatest right wing the game has seen.
It finds Cullen with a beautiful pass. Now they're lining up to score this one. Cullen might do it himself. Yes, he will.
superb. A player running those sort of lines, the sheer pace he could run at and change direction without changing pace. We haven't seen that before.
He was certainly the most exciting fullback I've ever seen.
Now he's got to do it on his own. Isn't he just brilliant?
Hugely optimistic. Cully, you know, you can't attack from behind your goal line against some of the best players in the world and score like he did without thinking he could do it and knowing he could do it.
Having him around, he could create these things because he was so strong in the tackle that he was able to wriggle out of things. You know, as we've seen in his highlight clips, you know, create something from nothing.
Looking to get into the gap. Clark, beautiful pass. Cullen on the outside. They won't stop him. Christian Cullen, brilliant try. Outstanding.
I got a trophy off Cully when I was 7. I shook his hand and I got the photo at home and this is Christian Cullen, man. This guy stepped everyone. No one could tackle him. He was amazing. And as a smaller guy, like, he gave you hope, you know, and everyone wanted to be Cully.
I was just able to read where he was going because we played so much together. We created a good relationship on and off the field.
Umaga, here he is again. He's got Cullen. They'll never see which way he goes.
And he just changed our attack. And, you know, the way we demolished Scotland and Carisbrooke, as well as it was Cully. I think he scored 6 tries in his first 2 tests.
As Fitzy would have said, you know, back in the mid-90s when they burst on the scene, I don't think you'd seen that sort of athleticism before, and it was like, wow.
Just the swerve, the way his speed, his agility, the way he would always attack the line really inspired the way a lot of teams play their rugby.
Cullen for the counter-attack. There he goes. And anything again could happen.
Give the man the ball in space, he'll do the damage.
Brilliant try. Outstanding. Christian Cullen comes up with the first try of the test.
Vintage Cullen.
He just had this huge desire to get out there and play and do the jersey proud.
Well, none of us made the cut, team. We obviously didn't work hard enough off the field to get some recruiting done, to get enough votes. But if we talk about the 3 players, Sir Brian Williams, John Olomu and Christian Cullen, look, you had the responsibility, you talked about it before, Mills, of coming in after Christian Cullen as the All Black fullback. Those are not easy shoes to fill, but there's no doubt he had a big impact on the game and he was something special.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the greatest fullbacks in the world, in my eyes. Just the way he was able to play the game. I was fortunate enough wasn't sort of lucky enough to be in the same team as him, but to play against him and have the great man on the other side, you know, was something really special. But the way he just glided, you know, every time he sort of got the ball, and I think a lot of people already sort of mentioned it, you know, something was going to happen regardless of where it was on the field, whether it was you know, right on his own line. And I think a wonderful memory for me as a youngster growing up is when he actually started in this, and that sort of try he created from his in goal at Hong Kong. So magical, and a good man as well. Very quiet, but certainly when he, you know, he made everything that he done on the field, he spoke in volumes because he just carved things up.
Look, we had a nickname for him in the team, was Crowbar. It was the fact you needed a crowbar to get it out of his arms, you know, to actually get your hands on the ball. But the reality was he was such a great player. And it was a pleasure to have played with him because he didn't need a lot of help from time to time. In fact, a lot of the time he didn't need a lot of help. But he was certainly one of those guys that could create and do things that other players couldn't do. But JK, I also grew up hearing stories of Brian Williams, BG heading to South Africa, like you talked about last week, breaking new ground, being one of the first to tour into South Africa. He was and is still a legend of the game.
Yeah, and look, hard luck, guys. Hard luck, you know. But I was, you know, I have a special affiliation with all 3 of the players for different reasons. So Brian Williams, like I was a kid, 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, when he toured South Africa, you know, one of the first Polynesian players going into apartheid South Africa, 8-foot sidestep in goal, right? He'd already scored the try and he had the courage to actually sidestep in goal. And I thought, I like that guy. That's awesome. But he was also a coach of mine and he helped me individually when I went and sought how I could sidestep like him, which I never could do. But anyway, I tried to learn it. Jonah was amazing. Like, I roomed with Jonah. I was one of the old guys and he was one of the new boys. I remember he walked into the room and I said, mate, Ford's down the hall, man. You know, I don't room with Fords. You know, he said, no, I'm a back. And then he took off his shirt. I thought, oh, time to retire. But, you know, he changed the global game. He was an amazing force. Really hard, probably our first ever superstar with international pressure, but, you know, grew and handled himself incredibly. And when I got dropped from the All Blacks, I found it incredibly difficult to watch the All Blacks. But then this guy, Christian Cullen, came along and he just incredibly excited me with the way he played, his ability to step at pace. And so Christian sort of brought me back to probably being an ex-player to becoming a supporter and a fan again. And I'll always remember that.
And Chelsea, for you, when you think about those three players, is there one that stands out?
Yeah, well, for me, growing up, Christian Cullen was my favourite player, but I mean, you can't go past Jonah Lomu. I remember when I was just a young girl, I would have been about 5 years old in Tokoroa, and Jonah Lomu was in the Westpac Bank, and I remember it so vividly. I just was absolutely starstruck. I think I got an autograph and a photo, and I'll just always remember it. He was just an absolute idol in my eyes, and I'm sure I was one of many New Zealand kids that thought the same. So yeah, I think like what JK said, he changed the game and just the absolute superstar.
I was lucky enough to have played with Jonah a lot, you know, and you know, he was something to marvel at. I got to play against him a lot as well, and that was frightful, fearful. I did enjoy any week preparing for those games, knowing that he would be the guy that I would be opposite against, and he would challenge me in every single way. But it was a guy who also brought out the best in you, and meant that, you know, as a team, there's not many players you have to change tactics completely when you're playing against them. But all of a sudden, it was you've got to do anything you can possibly do to stop Jonah, and then you worry about everybody else. And the debate and discussion, and thank you so much for getting involved and voting on the greatest All Black 15. This debate will continue to go on for years, as it always does, but it's been great to look back in the past and look at some of the greats. But we've got another weekend. We've got 4 more weekends, and guess what? They're all double headers, Chelsea. That's what's coming up this weekend. I can't wait for more action to come out of Australia.
Yeah, can't wait. It's gonna be awesome to see some other teams in action over there as well. Hopefully All Blacks get a bit more of a challenge this week, and we get a bit more nervous watching the game. I love a close game, so hoping for that.
Well, I think it's going to be a great challenge. We know what happened last year, JK.
Yeah, no, we owe Argentina one big time, so you've got to be careful of that one. But I am really interested to judge where South Africa are. We know they're world champions. They've just come off the Lions series, but it's going to be really good seeing them against Southern Hemisphere sides. So I think the doubleheader next week is really going to give us a good gauge on how hard this championship's going to be.
Big fight, Mills. This is going to be a real challenging 5 weeks, right? If you think about it, and you could already see from the game last night, the All Blacks starting to cramp up. A couple of guys coming off for HIAs. This is going to test the depth of all of the sides.
Oh, it certainly is. But when you're from an All Blacks perspective, a great way to start, really, what this tournament's, you know, in terms of the away league, what this tournament looks like. I don't think the Argentinians will sneak up like they did against us, you know, last year in the championship. I agree with JK. I think, you know, to see where South African rugby really is, and sort of I suppose from our side of it, you know, the performance they put up against the Lions, it was a total, you know, kicking game. How are they going to play this in this championship and the way they're going to go, particularly now when you see how wounded the Wallabies are? So I'm looking forward to that game. But in terms of the All Blacks progressing, great way to start their away series, or the away months, 4 months away from home, and looking forward to them, you know, putting in another really solid performance against the Pumas.
Can anyone see an upset this coming weekend?
Well, I hope so. I hope that the championship provides good footy. That's all. And look, if lose, whatever, as long as we come out top of the end.
You can see he's stretching for it. He's trying to find a way to go. It's not maybe the Springboks and the All Blacks, but imagine if it builds towards that. Thanks, Mills. Thanks, Sir JK. Thanks, Chelsea. Always great to have you with us here. I know it's not ideal just yet. I think we're getting closer, though, team, to maybe getting a little bit more freedom. All right, that's us from the Breakdown in lockdown. We'll see you in 7 days' time. Mā te wā.